Welcome back, everyone, for another edition of Vision and Voices here at Armanino. I'm your host, John Stewart, today, and I have the distinguished Brian McGuigan with me. Brian, welcome. Welcome to the pod. It's been a long time. We've been talking about the pod. Now you're on the pod. How are you doing today, sir?
Yeah, I put it off as long as I could, and you finally.
I just wear you down.
Tied me down. Yeah,
that's cool.
No,
how is it doing today?
Yeah,
it looks lovely in Seattle today, which I don't think people say very often. So tell us about it.
It's great. We're having one of those cold, clear days that you get in the winter here sometimes, and we're all enjoying it. The sun's out, and you can feel people happier. The long gray tunnel has parted for a bit.
That's great. That's great. Well, so while we're getting into it, Brian, I know who you are and I know what you do. Obviously, we've been friends for a long time.
Yeah.
But, we won't date ourselves, but it goes back well before our professional choices right now.
Yes.
So, but why don't you tell all the people out there in listening land, tell them about you, what you do, what you've been working on, and then we'll dive into it.
Yeah. So I'm currently the CEO of Laird Norton Company, which is a family-owned investment holding company based in Seattle. The family that own us have been in business together a long time, since 1855. So we have a family ownership group that has been doing it for generations, and as a result have worked through a lot of the problems that many other family businesses grapple with. LNC straddles the family office and family business world a little. And like many organizations, we have elements of both of those pieces. And from an investment strategy perspective, what we do is try and take advantage of the fact that we have permanent capital. We're not in a fund type environment where we to turn money. And so we try and make long-term investments, both in real estate and in private operating businesses.
That's great. Yeah, and I think that's really popular. I mean, you and I both know that saying, you've seen one family office, you've seen one family office. It's somewhat true. That's why it's a saying, because every family manages their wealth in different ways, right? Some overlap for sure, right? There's only so many ways to do it, but everybody's got a little different flavor, right? And I have always liked or admired the ones that take a very similar approach, where you're not just a family office, you're also a family business, and there's other ways to look at it, and they're looking at things that long term. I think we've lost that in society, where we're just not long-term investor friendly, really generally, right? So I think the family space does get that, though. They have different goals in mind, right? The generational wealth handoff, other things they want to build, and I love that about this. So I mean, that's obviously one aspect of family office, but let's just jump into like, what are some of those trends that you see, not just in family office, maybe in the family business space as well?
Yeah, as you say, it's hard to make broad generalizations about family offices because each of them has its own flavor, and that saying that you said is so true. If you know one family office, you know one family office. That being said, what I have heard and seen recently in our neck of the woods in the Pacific Northwest is we're seeing several family offices and family investment firms going through generational changes.
Yeah.
From maybe 1 to 2 or from 2 to 3. And with that, you see the predictable changes in risk appetite, return objectives, interest areas, and that creates a period of transition risk for all concerned, the owners, the beneficiaries, and for the teams that work there. Another thing that we hear a lot about when we go to dinners with family offices is concern about real estate. Yeah. I'd say most, if not all, family offices have some kind of real estate exposure.
Yeah, I don't know too many that don't, right? It's a very common asset to have in your portfolio for all the obvious reasons.
Yeah, it's a great asset for the offices and families to own. Many tax benefits. It's a long-term asset. It's a real asset. It has that inflation protection that comes with that.
Yeah, it comes with that thought of it's safer. Not that maybe that's necessarily true all the time, but yeah.
Exactly. The asset may not go to zero, but your equity position might.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. So we hear a lot of talk about that, about concern about, of course, people with office buildings struggling there, operating costs of any kind of real estate on the up, with both personnel and insurance costs, tepid rent growth in multifamily. But then you also hear family offices with great stories because they've been in some different product types which have done really well, like industrial, self-storage, and those sorts of things. And it just does go to show that even within real estate, diversification is a valuable thing.
Yeah, that's still a really broad industry and segment to talk about, right?
That's right, yeah.
not only just residential, commercial, industrial, but there's even more to it than that, right? Like that's a really wide, broad area that you could take a number of different approaches to.
That's totally true. And we've had there, and we've also had some parts of our real estate portfolio that are just great. And so it isn't a one size fits all or a single set of events, but for sure, there's been a lot of pain and a lot of concern when we get together with people. And then I would say that more on the family business side, get a lot of inbound requests for assistance from families going through generational changes at an operating business and or related things such as unexpected deaths, divorces, just disagreements among cousins or something like that.
Life events happen, and that's going to potentially impact how you run a family office or any kind of family business or wealth vehicle.
Yeah, and I suppose for better or worse, Laird Norton Company has a reputation for having handled those transitions successfully a few times. And so we get inbound interest in situations where families have a great business, nothing wrong with the business, but there's an issue with ownership. And they don't know how.
Those darn people, Brian, they get in the way.
Totally, yeah.
These humans, what are they doing?
If only the owners were simple to work with. And they don't know what to do. They feel like the only solution might be to sell the company because cousin A wants out or they've fallen out with somebody or someone died unexpectedly. And that is often the advice they get. And honestly, we identify that as a potential opportunity because we love partnering with families.
I was
And
gonna say, is that how you guys have handled it? Do you guys come into those families and try to help them by not just talking to them, but then partnering?
yeah, historically, we were happy to give kind of free advice based on our experience. But one or two of the families then asked us, hey, would you make a minority investment in a generational family business? And we started off saying, no, we don't really do that. And then it sort of sunk in that maybe that would be an interesting thing for us to do from our perspective and for their perspective.
Right.
And so now we're actively talking to people about becoming a long-term capital partner, not because they need money to grow the business or anything like that, but because there's an ownership transition need.
Right. And if you guys are good at it and the family has success in helping educate others, why not lend in there and help them get through this? When you do that, I'm just curious now and share only what you're obviously able to share, but what's the mindset going into it? Is it like, hey, we want a 25% stake, we want a board position? Like, how do you guys evaluate coming in and helping something like that?
It's a relatively new initiative for us, so we're still working through the details, but there's a minimum amount of ownership below which it probably wouldn't make sense. Where
That's what I was curious. Like, yeah, where do you see that threshold? Where do you feel like that influence sits?
It might be around sort of in that 15 to 20% range, where below which you're probably going to be passive. They probably don't want you on the board.
Right.
But anything from there up to say, call it, I don't know, 45% is fair game. And we would propose very lightly structured equity, with some minority protections and a right to a distribution, because if we're going to be in there forever.
Right. You want to have your covenants in order for that, which makes sense. I mean, you're coming in to help them. Why wouldn't they agree to that?
And the benefit of it is there isn't a ticking clock to a future sale of the business because
you're not playing it. Like what I love about this, the reason I'm asking is I feel like this is the new version of private equity, although it's kind of like the old version, because you're going back to a time, I mean, probably the early 1900s, mid 1900s, where you made these long-term investments. Like a Rockefeller or something would come in and help a business, and they would do it because they saw a long road, and eventually they're going to make out on it, but they're really just trying to build this sector or this area or whatever it might be. There's motivations there, but it's different than modern private equity that wants that 5 to 7 year term.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think modern private equity has done great things to.
Oh yeah. It's not to put down at all. It's just showing that maybe there's another model that can also help certain businesses too that private equity really doesn't touch right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's just an alternative for situations where it's a different tool or a different solution for a different situation. And you're right. It may be the old-fashioned way, but it's also maybe a new-fashioned way, and people are more and more interested in talking about it.
Hey, tie-dye t-shirts are back, Brian. So if that can come back, so can old ways of
Yeah.
doing investing, right? Like
Yeah.
it's all cyclical, my friend.
Oh, you need to put up a photograph of yourself in your tie-dye t-shirt.
But that's not going to happen today. We'll talk offline about that.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have opened that. Well, okay, good idea. All right. No, but I'm with you. I think that's what I'm seeing from what I see at my perch here at Armanino and looking at all the family offices, right, is very similar activity that, they're acting like a PE firm, but in a very different mindset, which is they have that long-term view. They're not putting that 5-year clock on someone necessarily. It's, hey, we'll be with you and help you grow it. And then when you finally do get to an exit or a transition point, we know we'll capitalize on that.
That's right. Yeah. And then you just service the capital along the way with the old-fashioned way of making money from a business, which is a dividend, and family businesses get that, especially generational family businesses. And it's for certain businesses a welcome change.
I was going to say, what's the
Yeah.
reception from the other party? Is it been a overall positive reception of like, oh my God, this is great? Or like, what do you hear usually?
Yeah, it's been very positive. We really only started actively telling people we were interested in doing this last year. Although we had been looking at opportunities for 3 or 4 years, we really started actively going out to the market and talking about it last year because we felt we had sort of got our ducks in a row enough to do so. And I have been very pleasantly surprised with the level of interest and the level of excitement from people about it, because I suppose there's this latent demand for something like that, but people don't know how to find it.
I feel like there is. That's why I was curious. And I'm not surprised you're telling me that. I think that would be naturally my gut says that would be their reaction.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a latency demand. I think people didn't know they could do this. And so they look for all their other options and see can you find some personal investor to help you? Can you maybe attract a PE firm, but likely none of these businesses will meet the criteria for that. Or you just throw it up for auction or sell it, right?
Yeah.
And I agree that popular answer is, oh, I'll just sell it, I guess. But honestly, that may not be the best for the long-term equity of what you're trying to establish here. That may not be the best answer.
It may
Actually,
not.
most times it's not.
And many times it isn't, yes.
Right.
Many
Particularly if
times.
it's transitioning family members. I mean, so when you guys go into, does the family come in and help advise on that? Or do you guys facilitate
No, no,
discussions?
we
Or how
don't
do you
bring
guys?
in the family at large typically. The Laird Norton family is now rather large, more than
I would
500.
assume, yeah.
Yeah. So what we do is we have executives within LNC who've got experience, and one of those executives is always a member of the Laird Norton family. We have an unusual role here called
Okay.
the President for Family Matters,
Okay.
which is a family member, always member of the board, but also an employee of the company who handles all of the family related things that come up so that the president for business matters, or the CEO, or the me, doesn't have to deal with those things.
Interesting. Yeah, this is a cool way of doing it. Okay, go on. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, it's very smart. I am not sure.
I don't know if I've heard this from another family before. I like this.
I've not seen it anywhere else. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but it was an idea that they implemented, call it 25 years ago, when the first non-family CEO was hired. And the outgoing family CEO realized that it'd be a tough job for somebody who was a non-family member to handle these family
Right,
matters.
just knowing the relationships, handling the influence, trying to wrangle all those, herd all those cats, so to speak. It
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. Just as the minute you said it, I was like, oh, John, geez, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I have to say, I am super grateful we have the position. Not because I don't want to deal with the family members, they're wonderful people, but it takes that knowledge, those relationships it takes a lifetime to build. And I haven't got
Yeah,
them.
how would you have those? You're not
Yeah,
going to have those. And even when you're done your tenure, whenever that is, you're still not going to have those because you'll build them, but it's not the
yeah,
same as the bloodline,
it's
obviously.
not the same.
Right.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing that we do that I sometimes mention to people as a good idea. And Jill, the current president, has been kind enough to talk to some people that we've engaged with and give them the benefit of that. And she turns up at family business events, speaks from time to time, and So we informally help people with that sort of stuff, but we don't kind of have a business consulting practice.
Right, right. No, which makes
Yeah,
sense. This is
yeah.
meant to be more informal and advisory in nature that, hey, as it comes up, we will connect you to people at our end that can help you
Yeah.
with those discussions. Yeah, it makes total sense. And I'm sure the individuals that are seeking this are finding it to be a welcome addition for them. Why wouldn't they? If they can
Uh,
maintain their business and get through the hurdles they're dealing with from the family, why wouldn't you want to do that?
yeah, I think it's a great solution in the right circumstance for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so unique. I love it. You know, it's funny. I didn't know about that until we started talking right here. I didn't know about that structure. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool. That's pretty cool. Well,
yeah,
okay, so family business trends in there, and I get that. Look, can I bring up a trend that I know is like such a buzzword anymore, but I
yeah,
know it's become, you know where I'm going with this. AI and automation, right? It is absolutely a buzzword everywhere, and particularly in the family office industry, it's been a massive buzzword for probably the past year and a half, right? I think this is one segment I've seen is more quick to adopt it than other segments. But so let's hear your view of that and what's your been experience so far? What are you seeing?
yeah. We, like everybody else, I think, is very interested to take advantage of what AI and process automation can do for us. Family offices tend to have small teams,
Right.
and these technologies potentially give us a lot of leverage on those teams, which is just potentially groundbreaking. It could just change the whole game for us.
And that's what we've seen at this end. You know this because I've shared these insights with you. But what we're seeing is they're really fast to turn an ROI for the family, right? These are not heavy software programs. They're not. Right.
Yeah,
They take a little bit to get going and set them up, but once they're out there, particularly when you talk about RPA, more like that low end
yeah.
automation technology, but low end's not the right term. It's not doing it justice because they're really powerful tools, but they're really cost effective, right? Like these are not things that are going to blow a budget. They're a fraction of an FTE cost.
And you don't take the risk that you would on a huge ERP project or a CRM project. It's bite size. It's, of course, I think most of the family offices I know don't have the the in-house to figure it out for themselves.
You're
So
100% right. I mean,
we've got
that's
to
why
go
I got a job,
external.
I think. Yeah.
Right. You gotta find people like you.
Yeah. I mean, we're happy
Help
to
us.
help, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it makes sense because they don't. Why would you hire an entire team to do this when you really don't need a team that's going to go long term with this? You
Yeah.
just want people who know how to do it well to put it in place quickly and get it working.
Yeah. And then you need somebody you can call when you need to call somebody, but otherwise allow your team to get on with it. So we're very intrigued. I'd say we feel like we're lagging a bit relative to some of our peers who have really taken the ball and run with it, as you've shown me and told me about.
Yeah.
But it's definitely on our roadmap of things to.
Well, in a way, you're smart to wait it out too. Like, I mean, I'm not poo-pooing any early adopters because the guys that do that, that's their mindset. That's what they want to do. And you need some of them to prove this out. But I don't think you've missed the wave where what you were able to sit out is like the clunkiness of the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Like some things work, some things don't. And it's easier to get those things handled and out of the way before you jump in, probably, right? So selfishly for you, it's probably a good call. You know, we've been putting, as you know, we've been putting bots in place in family offices since 2020. So
Yeah.
it's we're talking about almost 5 years now of putting place, and we've we're seeing it work seamlessly now. And now
Uh,
you add on the other AI tools, and you're taking it to another level, and we're learning, yeah, those things work too. Now, some of this you hear in the press, some of those are pie in the sky ideas; those aren't coming right away. But you can take the AI bots or the robotic process bots, and you can make the practical impact on your business today. There's nothing stopping that. It's just you got to pretend like all that pie in the sky stuff's not happening right now. It's very practical use cases.
I think that's the interesting thing that I've learned from talking to you, John, is most often you have a conversation with someone about this technology or these technologies, perhaps is a better way to say it,
True.
and they want to talk like futurists, this is, but they'll use the present tense. And so you get
Right.
confused
Right. Right.
about what we can do today.
We could do this all now. You're like, but you really can't though. Why are you saying that?
And so I think that your practical approach to what can you do today has been very interesting. And I think it resonates with the people who actually have to live with the stuff.
Right. And that's the whole point is that We know where the technology can go. Get it. See the potential. Totally see it. It's just not here today, like you said. It'll be here eventually. Maybe it's 5 years. Maybe it's 3 years. Maybe it's 10 years. I have no idea. But the point is, what we can do with it right now, we can come up with ways to make it useful right now in an economical way. And that's where we're seeing the success with it. I think that's where the family offices are seeing success. You can take a lot of those redundant rote processes, right? Like an AP cycle. That's the easiest example, right? Everybody has an AP cycle. So, but if you could automate 80% of that and not have to touch it again, wouldn't you do that? And it's a fraction of the cost? Of course you do that. Yeah. It's no-brainer stuff like that, I think, is where it's like the old adage of investing too. Like you invest in unsexy things. Well, AI and robotic process is going to be unsexy right now, right? It's not going to be these sexy things, but it doesn't mean it's not meaningful. It doesn't mean it's not having impact. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps in today's world, more meaningful, more impactful, and getting us ready for that future state.
Yeah, when Skynet rules the world and is in charge of us, Brian, then that's different. When the AI overlords come in, okay, that's different. We got time for that. That's not happening tomorrow. Not that I'm aware of, at least. So,
AI overlords are going to ban your tie-dye t-shirt, and then
yeah, they are. They're going to put that tie-dye t-shirt on again. Okay, okay. AI likes it. Yeah, I know. Although that could be, but now the term is artificial super intelligence. That's a new one, right? That's the level above AI. It's ASI. And there's another one even above that. I think it's artificial generalized intelligence or maybe that's switching the levels here, but there's an incremental gain here of how you go up. It does start to sound like Skynet. Okay. I don't want to sugarcoat it. It gets a little freaky, but we're not anywhere near any of that. Those are like decades away. That's quantum computing. But where we're at right now is like, I just look at it as like, this is software meant to improve companies and the way we do about our work, right? To me, it's just the new version of Excel. Think of it that way, right? When Excel hit the market, did people say, oh my, like the personal computer and Excel hit a market, right? People were like, oh my God, it's going to take jobs away. It didn't take jobs away. It just made us do our work better.
Yeah.
It's the same thing here. It's just make us do our job better. That's it.
And it raised the expectations of what you would do in your job.
Exactly. It changed it raised the bar for what you could go do now. Like I often think this is a total sidebar, right? Don't you wonder what our parents or grandparents did all day when they didn't have a computer on your desk? Did they just sit there waiting for the phone to ring? Like, I don't know. Like, what did you do all day? I have no idea. Like, if you look at, like, you watch Mad Men, what did they do?
Yeah. When there weren't emails to respond to, what were they doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. But I think you're right. This is just the incremental gain on efficiency of how we work. And that's how I've looked at the tools since they came into place. And I know that's where you identify with it as well. But I think that's how these things should be viewed at the moment.
I don't know if you know this, John, but my very first real job was automating things. But back in the day, when the way you automated things was with a macro in Excel.
A macro in Excel. Yeah. I mean, that's what this is. It's a macro on steroids. That's all they are, right? Yeah, I'm calling back to your rugby days where you were playing rugby and then programming stuff. But
I was never much of a rugby player. I played, but I was pretty bad at this.
That's not the story I tell people, Brian. So like maybe, good thing no one's watching yet. But yeah, let's go. Let's change the story.
I was a little bit better at macros than I was at rugby.
Yeah, you and me both. You and me both. So okay, and I'm with you on AI, and I think it's coming. But I think this is, if I was to get on my soapbox, it's look at it hard now because it's been proven for the practical cases, right? And I think you and others are seeing that, hey, there's a place for it. Let's learn now in the kind of the low-hanging fruit, if you will. And then you go from there if you want to take it to another level.
That's great advice for people, I think, and advice that I would do well to listen to.
Oh, cool. Awesome. All right, let's transition to your viewpoint on some stuff. I want to hear about your wish list for 25. You're a very accomplished executive. I love hearing where you're going with things. Lay it on me. Where are we going in 2025? What are you looking at?
Yeah, so we are very keen to make some new investments. We have been very carefully and deliberately building our war chest, and we feel ready to go and buy a company or two. But if I had my wish list in terms of an investment perspective this year, we would buy a new platform investment. We think of that as a business in an industry we're not in today that we buy a majority piece of and aim to own essentially forever and grow strategically over generations for the family. And then I would also like to make one of those minority investments that we talked about in generational family businesses. I think that would be
I
exciting.
really love that business model. I mean, the minute you said it, I was like, gosh, that's such a no-brainer.
I really feel excited about that, I have to say.
Yeah.
And then we continue to seek to invest in real estate. And the two things we're trying to do in real estate are find good people to partner with and be a minority partner with good investors in several different product types. And then directly, so the biggest part of our real estate portfolio is triple net lease real estate, which tends
Right.
to be
Okay.
retail, like industrial. And we want to a new relationship with a new tenant in that arena. That's what we've been doing longest in real estate.
Is
Talk
it
about,
always Pacific Northwest focused, or do you guys look all over the place?
no, we are broader than the Pacific Northwest. For multifamily and office, we've tended to focus on 5 cities, which are Seattle, Portland, Denver, Salt Lake City, and Boise. What we say for triple net real estate is we look further than that. And what we say for companies is generally we look at the northwest quadrant of the United States. So the southeast corner of that might be Denver,
Right, as you're drawing the map out, I get it.
yeah, yeah, especially for something where it's a new platform. For a business where we already have a platform and we're adding on,
Well, you're capturing a list of these growing tech hubs too, right? They're
there's
Denver,
some
Salt
good
Lake,
markets.
Boise. You
Yeah,
mentioned a couple of them that if you're watching this, right? If you watch this stuff, those are the growing tech centers at the moment. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, it makes
And we
sense.
tend to see better deals in the cities where we already do business. So
You know it. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
So those are from an investment perspective, what we are keen to do.
I'm going to sidebar you here real quick. Do you feel the economy is set up the way to go through that, or do you have concerns there as well?
And look, I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the world at the moment, and that's okay. A family business that's been around as long as this one has been through some very uncertain times.
Right. Not the first time you've seen uncertainty. Yep.
Yeah. And my
Mhm.
personal background, I grew up in South Africa, and I think South African business people just regard uncertainty as a fact of life, and
It's just part of the DNA of what you do every day. Right.
you
That
just
makes
get
sense.
on you just get
Yep.
on with it. Yeah. So there's certainly uncertainty, but if you don't take risks, you don't get returns. And we believe there are opportunities. And we don't have a crystal ball. I'm not an economic forecaster, but we see opportunities, and we are very keen to participate in
That's the
those.
other advantage of the family office, though, is that long-term mindset. Granted, listen, a lot of family offices, if you're new generational wealth, if you're a centimillionaire now because you just exited a big tech firm, I get it. I'm not talking about that, right? I am talking about these institutionalized families that have been around for generations that have seen it all. So that if this doesn't shake anything for you. It doesn't even reach up to that critical level because you're like, yeah, we'll get through it like we always have, and we have
Yeah,
that long-term mindset.
that's very much the view. And but with that in mind, one of the things that undoubtedly we have seen in our hometown, which is Seattle, is a real hangover of the COVID experience
Yeah,
where
downtowns just took such a hit, right? Yeah.
it's
Particularly on the West Coast, I think. Yeah.
West Coast tech cities, Seattle, San
Mhm.
Francisco, places like that. And it's been sad to see. And so, kind of a slightly more personal, but I suppose business related as well, desires to see continued progress in that recovery from that COVID hangover, which for sure we have seen, but it's nowhere near as vibrant and energizing a place as it could be and it used to be, and I'm sure it will be again. And I just would love to see that advance.
I think that's a great mindset too. Like we can't keep passing the buck on that stuff. It has to be the individuals and families that live and reside in those cities that care enough to say, hey, we're going to try and rebuild it.
Yeah,
We're going to
yeah,
try and bring it back. Because, yeah, Portland took a hit. Seattle took a hit. San Francisco, I mean, that's been documented. LA's downtown took a hit. Like you look up and down the Western Seaboard and they all took downtown hits and it's not the only towns, right? But
yeah.
yeah, I think that's great to hear that is that you guys care enough to like the community as well. It's like, hey, this is our home. We want it to flourish.
Yeah, we try and be a positive member of the community. I mean, we're small, and there are large players who do amazing things, and we just try and contribute our piece, and do it um, within our means, but
Right.
try to contribute.
I love that. So let's talk about advice you would give to other family offices. Let's say I'm a family office exec. I just got put in place with a family and they're going through some of these things that maybe you've already learned those lessons on, right? What would
Mhm.
be some of those best practice or advice that you would give me in that role? Like, what would you say to me?
The working in a family office or in a family investment shop requires some different skills or traits.
I would agree. It's different than a lot than what people think, correct? I mean,
Yeah, it's different from your standard institutional investment job where everything really is about the IQ. In a family office environment, you have to blend it with the right amount of EQ.
I was going to say it's not just about IQ. The family's absolutely going to have an emotional component to this.
Very, yeah, and it's just part of the job. And if you aren't into that, you shouldn't go into this world.
Right.
I personally love that combo, and so I enjoy it. I think it makes for a richer experience where the
I do as well.
owners,
Yeah.
you have a real connection with the owners. You're not 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps removed from the owners, and you're just talking about assets. We're talking about businesses, and people have an emotional connection to those businesses. Building
Like you
trust.
were just explaining, the decision making is going to be multifaceted. Am I helping rebuild a community, for example? Like there's other ways to look at this that are not just about dollars and cents.
Yeah, and for sure. I mean, we're a dollars and cents first shop, right?
Right. It's not saying you don't mind them, but you look at the
Yeah,
other factors. Right.
but we do it. We consider those other factors, as you say, building trust with the principles of multiple generations, I think is important.
That's got to be hard to do. Obviously I've never sat in that chair, but I got to imagine that's a tightrope you walk in the beginning because it's such a critical thing to have the trust of them. Otherwise, you won't be successful.
Yeah, it's very easy to lose trust, but it's hard to build trust. And so
Yeah.
it's an effort to make sure that I think at least with the family I work for, just be transparent. People are smart. They'll figure it out if you're not giving.
Right, right. In a way, you're right. Just take that view. Like, I'm just gonna be open. I'm gonna go do my
Yeah.
thing, and they're either gonna really love that or they're not. And if they don't, then I don't fit here, and I should go figure that out.
Yeah, and the other, I think another related element in building trust and in exercising that EQ is listening well, listening to what people say, listening to what people don't say, listening to subtext.
Well, my dad has a saying on that one, Brian, that I know you'll love. He said, "Hey," he used to say it to me a lot as a kid, not so much now as an adult, but he used to say it a lot. It's like you get two ears and one mouth for a reason. Listen more.
There's a
That
smart
makes
guy,
sense.
your
The
dad.
math's clear.
When are you planning to learn that lesson, John? I'm just
Yeah, I
kidding.
don't know. It hasn't sunk in yet. Yeah, so don't get excited, Brian. Don't get excited. He's just stopped asking it. I didn't say I was doing it. Yeah.
Yeah,
But it
yeah,
makes sense. Particularly with the family, there's going to be a lot of subtleties that you have to learn to pick up on, I would assume.
yeah. I think it's important to pay attention, and not always the loudest person has the best idea, so you do need to listen carefully. In terms of building an organization,
Yeah.
uh, that what we've tried to focus on here is really building an organization where we hire people with a service ethic. I think the service ethic, if it's in you before you come to work here, it's a lot easier than trying to build a service ethic. And the service ethic really sets you up well for success in a family organization.
Makes sense.
It's about wanting to serve rather than wanting to be served. It's that sort of servant leadership model, which we find works well, makes life more fun, easier, better.
It speaks to the culture you're trying to create there, which goes again to the goals you were just talking about. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Makes sense.
And then I think almost a plug for you here, but family offices,
Go on.
family offices tend to have small teams.
Yeah.
So you got to figure out what your in-house capabilities are and where you're going to need to augment with outside expertise rather than building a huge overhead that you're going to regret later by trying to do it all in-house.
Yeah. And why would you, right? I mean, yeah, I know that's a selfish plug for Armanino and others that we provide obviously a lot of services to help here, but outside of that influence, it wouldn't make sense to build an entire thing that way. Like, why would you do that?
But you often see family offices go through that cycle.
Mhm.
They bring someone in who's ambitious, has great ideas, wants to build out a lot of infrastructure, and then sometime later, they start reversing course and bringing that overhead under control.
Yep. Yeah. And
So
it's usually the first advice I'll give a family office when I first meet them is like, don't overdo your overhead here. There are other ways to do this now. And I don't mean necessarily always the answer is, oh, bring in an Armanino. Okay, maybe that is an answer, but that's not the only answer. There's other ways to do this too. And to be mindful, like just don't throw people at it. Like that's not necessarily always the answer here.
absolutely. Yeah, building overhead is like a classic family office mistake, I think.
I feel like it is. I feel like you're right. And you got to look at it from that old triangle of people, process, technology. That has to be balanced. So if you're only looking at the people part, you just miss two of the other areas.
Yeah.
And I find that that's usually the case is that you're just not looking at the rest of that triangle, and you got to realize there's a dynamic at play and you have to find that balance. It doesn't mean you have to be all weighted in one way or the other. Everybody can create their own flavor of that, but you got to figure out what it is.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure there are many other smarter pieces of advice, but those are the ones that come to mind.
But we're going with building trust and listening more. Those are the big ones. And then use Armanino if you can, right? Like, why not? Why not? Let's just use Armanino. That's fine. I appreciate you plugged that in, Brian. That's good. No, well, listen, I really appreciate your time today. This has been fascinating. I know you and I have been talking. We talk like this anyway, and it was just kind of funny. We were like, hey, let's put it on camera, I guess. But
yeah.
Well, Brian,
thank you for the invitation.
What you're doing is great up there. Like you're just making such a big impact. And, obviously as a friend, I love seeing you successful, but I'm also love seeing Laird Norton do great things too.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you so much. John, it's been good as always. And it's also been good over the last couple of years to develop a professional relationship with you and your firm.
I know this is different, right? We're usually just going to tailgates and stuff. This is a different way to do things.
And it's an impressive firm, and you have a great growth story at Armanino.
We do. We have been unapologetic about it. I think we figured out that a long time ago, not a long time ago, but maybe several years ago, that the world is all about technology, and accounting firms should be too. And so we kind of made a big shift and invested in that. And I like to joke that we're really a technology firm disguised as an accounting firm. It doesn't do it total justice, and I'm being a little quick there, but the point is that there's a whole nother thing we're building here because that's where this is going. And we kind of talked on pieces of that today, but yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, we're building something cool here.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story, and it's good that you're getting it out there because I believe that if more people knew about your story, they would be impressed by it. I mean,
feel free to get my name out then.
It's a pretty cool tale. So
it is. It's not bad. We're doing good stuff, and more's to come. Like, I mean, you probably saw we took a private equity investor at the end of last year, so we have a minority partner now. Further Global, for those interested or listening, they're fantastic. We're a huge fan of them. They've been great to partner with so far.
Oh, good.
But that just goes back to building that war chest. That like you mentioned for Laird Norton, that's how we're doing it here too. Because we're going to go after a similar strategy of, hey, how do we make greater impact with the stuff we're learning? And I'm excited for this year. I think some good stuff's coming. Yeah. All right. So we'll have to catch back up later in the year on this. We'll check back in. How did those goals go? Are we repositioning them at all?
If it goes well, we'll have an episode 2. If it doesn't go well,
if it doesn't go well, we'll just never mention it again. Awesome. Well, Brian, I want to thank you formally for being on today. Audience out there in listening land, thank you guys. Another Visions of Voices coming at you. We'll have more soon. Thank you for tuning in.